Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Now, it's been a minute since we had an episode because we've been busy. We went to...
Life.
Yeah, well, we went to Life. Also went to Paris and then to Disneyland and Anaheim. And then we did SeaWorld, Secret Magic Mountain, Discovery Kingdom,
And then
the
we
whole
went
shebang, boardwalk,
to
whatever.
Northern California. It was a family reunion of sorts.
Yeah, so all that good stuff, we did all of it. We've kind of off the scene. But we're back, and we're going to pick up kind of where we left off with our European parks. We did, at this point, a couple weeks ago at least. We're talking about Tripsdrill today, with Erlebnispark Tripsdrill. Again, thank you guys for having us out. We appreciate you inviting us. We're going to just kind of take like a note up. We usually do like a tour of the park, and we'll start with the original part of the park, I guess. It's in a vineyard, which is the biggest bit of information here.
I just love this place so much. Like, this park is just perfect to me. The old part of the park, which is right kind of in the middle, is just so charming. It's so, what's the word? Like, it's pristine, but it's so full of character. Just looking back at the pictures, I'm just like amazed all over again, like the flowers and stuff. And if so many of these cute rides, like this has got to be like the little like tracked ride, like family ride capital of the world.
Well, to give you some background, so we're in the middle of nowhere, and we're kind of in Germany's vine country.
Mm-hmm.
And to get there, you have to go to those little small towns. It's really inconvenient, but really fun at the same time. And then you get to the park, and you kind of can see it at the last minute because it's kind of hidden behind a giant hill. Where there's grapes growing. And the original part of the park is kind of like a small square that has like a wine cellar and museum, and then a bunch of little track rides that are themed to winemaking, whether that's like a little barrel ride or it's a little teacup-ish kind of ride.
Or
like
the soup terrine.
Exactly. And lots of like obviously flowers, and there's a couple of mini animatronic shows which definitely come from an age where a lot of the smaller European parks, that was kind of like an attraction. So that's kind of the original part of the park. And they also, in that original part of the park, have a Zero Tivoli coaster.
A double figure eight.
Which is really nicely landscaped. And then they have two additional areas of the park. There's a giant loop that they added onto the end of the square, which is home to the big four coasters, or the big three coasters.
They started this expansion in the late 90s with the first coaster and the log flume, and then kind of worked their way back.
Yeah, and then also the rabbit ride. And then on the other side of the park, which is actually close to the entrance, they have the area that now is home to the new Vekoma invert / family boomerang, half super cup, and full dump. So we're just going to start talking about some of the attractions in the old park, and then we'll just kind of end with half super cup. So another attraction in the old park that I really liked, we kind of mentioned earlier, is the spinning wine barrel ride.
The wine barrel.
I don't exactly know how it works either, because there are some parts like you spin out of control, but it's like activated, deactivated. So I'm not really sure how exactly it works.
I don't know. It's just magic. It's powered by magic wine.
Oh, babe, that's
magic
not
grapes.
Okay.
Babe, it's magic.
It's not magic. There is an answer to this question. I just don't have it. That's a really cute ride. So you kind of go through this little garden, I guess. And you're
it's really like their signature ride. So when you go to the winery and get your complimentary wine goblet for wine tastings in the cellar, the wine barrel ride is etched into the glass. I really feel like that, and like their little windmill slide and the little maypole themed spinny ride at the entrance, like those are their signature rides, and they're all like.
It's funny because they're all rides. Like equally spread out in front of the wine cellar. So it really much feels like a really cohesive little park that's very tiny compared to all the stuff they've added since. Of course, you have that family, the Zero Tivoli coaster, which its queue is actually
it's a giant like arbors,
arboretum. like a hedge maze vibe almost, but it's like covered like with tunnels of greenery, and it's hard to explain, but it's
like plant archways.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then there's a couple of weird rides, like that mallard ride, where it's just a bunch of ducks going in a row and it wouldn't stop. You could jump on or off.
You just like can pick your kid up and out of it or drop them in. I mean, yeah, there's like kiddie rides all over the place. A bunch of little like monorail type rides. A couple of different there's a antique car ride, and you can either get like the old Ford or you can get a horse-drawn carriage vehicle that seats like 6 people. It's freaking great. And so everything in that area of the park is like a vintage ride, except for the Gerstlauer Skyfly.
Yeah, that's right. The simulator, which is a nice fit for it.
Looks very nicely integrated with these other rides that are all look like they're at least 40 years old.
And I do want to make it known that your ticket includes a visit to the wine museum and wine cellar, and you get a free little goblet to fill up with wine for tasting. And then the wine samples are between $2 and $3 euros, of course. And there's lots of different kinds of wines, but they're all regional. So there's like a bunch of awesome regional wines that are literally made right there.
This is like a god-tier amusement park experience, like non-ride attraction. Like it's right up there with like the whale shark aquarium at Chimong Ocean Kingdom in terms of like
overselling it a tiny bit.
You know, I mean this is like this cellar is like over 100 years old.
Yeah, it's very cool, but it looks like any other cellar, and you know it's.
But it's just like in terms of.
I mean, like if we're gonna talk Chimong, it's like the world's greatest aquarium, but like the largest. I know, like
wall, it's a record-breaking aquarium.
This is just a wine cellar.
World's largest single acrylic panel.
Acrylic, that's what it was.
My point is that it's a super unexpected and very, very special attraction to be with, like, inside of an existing amusement park. Because I would say that, like, having an aquarium in your theme park is not as common as having a wine cellar and a functioning winery in your theme park.
Yeah, but, like, even having an aquarium of that size, it's usually like its own attraction.
Right,
like that's not inside the theme park, so it's almost equally as unique. Because they sell wine at like almost every major theme park. But having a wine cellar like that is quite unique, yes. But they have aquariums at a bunch of different parks. They have an aquarium like that. It's really unique. That! So what I'm saying is, that one, the parallel is fine, but to call it greater than
I didn't say it was greater. I just said it was like... That's what it reminded me of when I was like...
There's something you said that implied that it was even more significant.
We're wasting time. Let's move on. Do not antagonize me over semantics. It is 2 a.m.
Beautiful. So, next up, we're going to go to the big loop.
Didn't they have a name for this area? Like, because it's mostly grassy.
I do not know, but
grassland area.
It is a giant grassland area. And so to get there is hard. So when you get for the
it's not that hard.
To get for the entrance of the park to this giant loop, you have to kind of like make your way around the old park.
You just kind of make like a $sign shape. It's very simple.
It's super simple. Which implies you also have to go and do the 2 streaks that go through the S.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then you get to this giant loop. You're like, wow, it's a giant field with grass in it, very European. Everyone's just laying out and like camping
picnicking and whatnot.
Picnicking, whatnot. And then the first thing you see is the log flume, which is the infamous bathhouse themed log flume. The area is actually very well known to have like Thermen, which is kind of like it's a German word for like a bathhouse. And so the women houses, is that what they call them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thing from the region actually. And the log flume is that. So it's a mag log flume. Similar ride experience when it comes to comfort and stuff to Wallaby Holland and Wallaby Belgium's mag flumes. You know, you've seen them.
This is one of the best log flumes in the world.
Like, it's super awesome. It has a backward section, forward section, beautifully landscaped.
The indoor scene of the bathhouse is gorgeous. It's stunning.
Exactly. So it's kind of a highly themed. And it's interwoven in this castle they build that also has the Gerstlauer bobsled through it.
Mm-hmm.
Those were like those were built together
simultaneously. It's funny because even though one is Mack and one is Gerstlauer, they were built so seamlessly together. The mouse came first, and then the log flume came in 1999, and all of the infrastructure that the mouse shares with the log flume, it was all built, and the mouse opened, like partially still under construction. And this is a trend for them. This is something that they would do again later with Caraco, where the coaster opened one year and the theming and whatnot is just a skeleton of sorts. And then the following year it debuted with the theming and the scenery, and in this case with also the log flume, which is what was built in conjunction with actually finishing up the theme components for the mouse. So a really, really cool little combo attraction there. Definitely like the first place that I go in this little loop area. And
well, let's talk a little bit
counterclockwise.
about the, well, not really Wild Mouse. It's the first ever Gerstlauer bobsled coaster.
It's the first ever Gerstlauer coaster, period. Yosemite Sal, which is, I don't have to tell you, beautifully landscaped, because everything in this park pretty much is. I think what's even cooler about this ride than the little castle that it shares at the log flume, I think, is the terraforming that they did with the bunny hops at the end. I mean, it's really, this ride's really a work of art.
So the funny thing is that it's really themed to sleds. And every ride at this park has mannequin-filled cubes where they have all the little scenes they built, and this is no exception. So the theme is you go into kind of like a stable of horses, and
it's a little horse-drawn carriage.
Yeah, that kind of, I guess, just takes off to the castle. Awesome smoothness. I can't believe how incredibly smooth it is. The vehicles are a little bit smaller than the more recent.
Yeah, because like Van Helsing Factory's vehicles,
I can sit in front row, no problem, for example. But then I tried sitting in front row on Yosemite Sal, and it was not a thing.
I guess because these were prototypes.
Fit.
Like, they didn't have like a standard vehicle size set up yet.
And the layout's pretty massive. We look at the pictures on the CozyKings.com that we have. You can really kind of see it at the part of the ride where the exit's located, which is not even the furthest point. It's very, very far away from the castle itself, which has the Wild Mouse part and the Heliosis and stuff. Ride. It's quite impressive. And even though this has been cloned,
Gerstlauer had a big hit with this.
And then there's the similar coaster in Park, also in the wine area, Germany, a couple hours away from there.
And that one's a custom, right?
That is a custom, yeah. It is pretty impressive that so much of this ride is hidden, and it's so well terraformed. Mm-hmm. It's honestly, you can kind of almost miss it if you don't really pay attention. The castle is very prominent, so is the flume coming out of it, but you can kind of forget there's a coaster that winds all the way through.
This is the kind of ride. It's very like Batman the Ride at Great America, where you ride the clones first, and you're like, oh, this is a nice layout. Like, I can see why they cloned this. Like, I rode Thor's Hammer at Jura Summerland first, and then rode this.
Didn't you ride the one at Erlebnispark too? Is that a copy of this?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But Thor's Hammer I rode before I rode the original, and I was like, oh, this is a great layout. Like, it fits in so nicely with Jura Summerland. And then I rode the original and was like, wow, okay, I can really feel how this was designed for this park specifically.
Oh, totally.
And the fact that it worked so nicely in other parks was just a nice coincidence. Like, it fits in so nicely at Jura Summerland. It's hard to believe that it's a clone. Because that one, like, goes over the water, and, like, it just feels very tailored to the park. But that is the beauty of a good production model ride, is if you can design it just so that when you put it in a park, it doesn't necessarily feel like it was just dropped down matter-of-factly.
In the same plaza, so this park is a Gerstlauer kind of park, because they also have two more Gerstlauers two more Gerstlauer coasters in this area.
I guess it's a big Gerstlauer Vekoma park now.
Who made the Rapids ride?
The Rapids ride is that one European company that I always forget. They did the Rapids ride at
Beyond Long, Torverlongs. They've done a bunch
Wild
of them.
Adventure.
Yeah, so it's like the ones that always do like the giant, generally speaking.
Like the little pie shaped and the big whirlpools.
They do the big whirlpools. And there's even a whirlpool on this Rapids ride, but it doesn't actually go anywhere.
It doesn't go into the whirlpool.
So this Rapids ride is themed to the history of cleaning clothes.
Yeah, it's like laundry. It's
laundry to ride. There's even like this really interesting map in the queue that shows you like how different laundry was throughout Germany at a certain point. Like how differently technology was. Like in some cities there was like actually like
it almost gives me like Epcot vibes.
It was really,
it's like Carousel of Progress,
really
but it's like the Carousel of Laundry.
And then you ride the laundry thing. And so this Rapids ride is actually quite massive. It's pretty wild. There is obviously like every Rapids ride, giant waterfall section. One of those turns with a bunch of waterfalls. Really nicely landscaped. I think the biggest surprise to me was this like weird drop they had. It was almost like a chute. The chute,
that was a good moment.
And then you go down and you go into a tunnel.
Yeah.
Like it was really neat.
It had like a proper splashdown. The whole vibe of this Rapids ride, it's the ride that's in the middle of the loop. all the other attractions are on the outside of the loop, and it reminds me a lot of Toverland.
But it's so nicely landscaped that you kind of forget it's there. It's kind of just boats floating through, like, just scenic looking pond.
Toverland did a really good job integrating the rapids ride. I think it's from the same
Jenga
company,
River.
I think.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like this whole like expanding your park into a new area and making the rapids ride the centerpiece is a total vibe.
Well, it's nice, yeah, for sure, because you kind of like landscape it and
very
make it
Toverland, very SeaWorld San Diego.
The difference between the Toverland is that one's highly elevated, so most of the ride is actually elevated for Toverland. That's where this
one feels a bit more natural.
It's ground level. In fact, at some point, like the midways are above the ride. So, and then right next to it is Mammoet, which is the park's Gerstlauer wooden coaster. Yes, you heard that right. A Gerstlauer wooden coaster. It's a prefabricated, much like the Intamin's.
Yeah.
However, it has trains from Gerstlauer. It did not run what I expected to run. Okay, it's kind of sad because...
And Sven warned us, and I didn't fully believe him, and then I was like, oh, yeah.
And it's a little sad because the queue is themed with mannequins and everything to buzzsawing, I guess, like logging, and then there's this like pre-show that's before the lift hill that's pretty neat. Like, it's an overall like well-themed attraction. The layout's spectacular, but it's cool. It just doesn't track very well. So, and the trains are not very comfortable. So I was just slamming the shit out of my knees the entire ride, which is kind of unfortunate. We gave it another shot later in the day, and it was not any better. Like, it was just as bad.
When I rode it in 2013, it just felt really, really gentle, like so smooth that it just almost didn't feel like a wooden coaster. Like, all of the forces and the wooden coasteriness of it felt like it was kind of engineered out. This time it felt like it just wasn't running as intended. Like the trains were sort of fighting the track. It was a little bit like our bandit rides on this trip, but not as bad.
Practically.
But not great.
Well, the cool thing
I don't know
about the ride is that it has all those tunnels and it's like pretty nicely terraformed. It's just not very... Well, yeah, it's just not very smooth, unfortunately. I did like the landscaping, that sort of thing.
I loved the whole area around it because it was all like the lumber area, I guess. There was like a kiddie area attached to the station.
Like this play area.
That was really fun.
That was kind of neat.
I think the part of this park that really sticks with me, aside from like the old stuff with the wine and whatnot, is how fascinated they are with doing their little vignettes and the little animatronics. Like, there is so much detail. The Rapids Ride one, I think, is still my favorite because it really is a very lengthy demonstration of animatronics. Like, and it's classic.
Yeah, see, the queue for Gesenkte is cool because it has that giant theater.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you go through, it's like you watch this giant screen, it kind of goes about the history of the sled, and then you have like all these like different kinds of sleds parked in this giant room, and then you go into all these stables. That's honestly a really neat queue, and you can see that obviously was the first big coaster it ever had, so it always used to get big lines. And then for Mammoet, it's mostly outdoor, but because it's a buzzsaw facility, I guess, like a sawmill. And then for Caraco, it's indoor.
It's all indoor.
Which I guess we can talk about Caraco real quick.
It's very, like, it gives me Pirates of the Caribbean nostalgia. It has that kind of charm to it.
Caraco?
No, I mean all the audio animatronics.
Well, I guess they're all stationary, but yeah.
They're very simple. Like, it's like old Pirates. Like, Pirates of the Caribbean, like, the animatronics on all of Disney's rides these days are a lot more articulated now. But these are simple animatronics, but they're so sweet and just satisfying and classic in a way that feels substantial and likable. It doesn't feel dated or like underdeveloped or undermaintained or anything. It's like a stylistic choice that's just really charming and feels like kind of bygone, like a lost art of like the simple animatronic and character molds and things. But yeah, Caraco has what exactly? I mean, the theme of Caraco is like
it's steampunky.
Yeah, it's like steampunk, like rocket.
It definitely comes from the steampunk era too. When you think about it, that was really the time that all these parks started doing steampunk. I mean, like literally everyone was into the steampunk thing in like 2014, 15, 16. So practically, you are, I guess, board in this experimental rocket thingy. When you leave the station, you have this cool drop that it goes underneath the queue. and you have this like this, spoiler alert. You have this barrel roll underground before launching out and doing a bunch of big elements. It's actually one of my favorite Gerslauers.
Me too.
It had like the power of Gold Rush and Slagharen, where it's like really snappy in some points, and really forceful, but it's spread out this like giant field, and interacts with landscape and has tunnels. There's an element where there's this really sharp dive loop into the tunnel underground, and then you come out of it via a corkscrew. Super unique and fantastic. Really enjoyed it. And then the exit store is also a ice cream shop and a restaurant.
Cafe. Yeah.
And the restaurant is actually really nice. We
got
what did you have to eat again? Veggie burger. Yeah, you had fries, and I had that like yogurt salad, like the salad with like a yogurt dressing. Really good. We sat out and ate like underneath the coaster
and watched. It was,
and you can kind of see all the coasters from there. It's a really pleasant area.
This ride is like the perfect looping coaster because it has inversions that are like amazing highlights of the ride, but it's not all inversions. It feels like the layout of the ride is pretty straightforward. It's not like super long, but it just feels expertly crafted and forceful and interesting. The first time I rode this, it was about a week old, and kind of like with Yacinque Sal, it was just like the concrete shell for the station was there, and that was it. Like the coaster was open, and it was just a coaster, and everything else was like dirt and scaffolding. So we were really lucky that it was open for us, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'm going to come back someday, and I'll get to actually see like the finished product. And yeah, the finished product is gorgeous. Like the restaurant exit area and the queue, the station, like it's so much. It's even more grand than I had imagined based on seeing the skeleton and stuff for it. So yeah, it was really cool. It was great, and it's aging beautifully.
Oh yeah, it's like I feel like Gerslauers often have like a Gerslauer battle to them.
Gerslauers are
this is not one of
equal.
them. Yeah, well, it's funny because all the Gerslauers except for the Woody there we're running really well.
Every coaster at that park ran really well except for the Woody.
Now let's see what else we have in the area. I think that's kind of it for the area. So there is, I guess, 6 major rides there.
They have the 2 major water rides, the
3 major coasters,
the 3 coasters,
5
and they have that
there.
little swing around flat ride behind Caraco that looks like the vehicles look exactly like Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure, but it's just like a spinny ride.
Is it a kiddie ride?
It's just like a little swing around thing. It's like a family ride. It's
in the big circle?
There was one at Hansa Park too.
It's in the big circle.
Yeah.
Or is it?
It's like the only non-tracked ride in the big loop.
Why am I having a hard time imagining this?
And it was really kind of off to the side here. It's on Google Maps. I'm gonna pull it up for you. But they're really popular in Europe, these little swing around rides that are like motorbikes. Because the one where the El Paso Express used to be at Hansa Park, they put one there too. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I really don't.
Okay, hold on.
Please hold for the next available. So one thing actually that I'm going to fill time with real quick is there are all these really cool 3D photo ops. Because the midways are pretty large in this area. And they made all these like paintings that are like themed to whatever the areas are themed to.
That's a great way to
we took a couple of cool pictures like that. Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Midways.
I'm looking back at them right now on the report, and it looks pretty sick.
See, here's the loop, and it really is such a cool area with like the big grassy areas and coasters and stuff around, and the rapids right in the middle. Here's the little flat ride I'm talking about. This right here, Heiserhofen, and it is like just these little motorbike sidecar. Do you remember?
I remember now. Yeah. Also very steampunky.
Super cute, right? Yeah, it's like
part
a smokestack is like the thing in the center. But yeah, so those are the 6 rides. There's 1 flat ride. Oh, there's a little video of it. 1 flat ride, 2 water rides, 3 roller coasters.
Yeah. And this park itself, if it's not really busy, the operations are pretty decent. You can get a lot done. And while it's really sprawling, there isn't like a whole lot to it because it's a lot of these really big attractions that take up their own space.
Yeah. It's a concise little park. I think that middle area is really actually the part, even though it's kind of it's not that big, the center area of the park, it's kind of the area of the park that you'll get lost in, kind of wandering around and seeing it kind of just seems to keep going and going. Like once you go up into the kiddie area that has that duck ride, it just feels like there's just so much to it. But it's just like it's the most perfect little kiddie park. I mean, it's so much more than kiddie rides. But if you have kids that aren't into thrill rides and they just want to go on rides that move kind of slowly and explore like the environment, this park is just a winner. Like there's just so many little rides like that, and they're also just adorable and satisfying. They have the small monorail that you just sit in, and it's like these like little wooden planter box themed cars, and then it has like the pedal cycle one that's butterfly themed.
They even have the like bike your own bike thing, which is kind of.
And then they had the little bunny rabbit, like little forest animal ride.
Yeah,
it's like a miniature car ride outside, and then of course the Ford and horse and buggy car ride, which is actually like quite long. Like unless there's two of these rides. I think there's just the one. But, like, look how... I'm looking at Google Earth right now. And, like, look how long it is. Like, this car ride is giant. And it's
totally.
Underneath the
it's almost hard to see when you're actually there.
Yeah. They got some other flat rides, too. Some standards, like a waltzer and a wave swinger. And
then there's the last area of the park, which is where the newer coasters are. So when you get into the park, it's actually the most convenient to get to. That is home to a water ride that's kind of in a pond, like a naturalistic kind of water ride.
Oh yeah, it's a splash battle, but it's like...
Is it?
Yeah, well, sort of.
Because I feel like it's almost like a homemade version.
It's like it's got little water features and things, but it's like they're themed to like little trinkets and gadgets and stuff.
And then they have this
like flower watering cans.
And you may have seen this somewhere on like TikTok or something, because I think it went viral.
Oh, the freaking drop tower.
It's a weird drop tower, which is like, how do you describe those drop towers?
It's funny how it's like you feel like it's like floorless, like you're sitting on it and you're sort of straddling.
So if you don't know what these are, it's like two trees that face each other, and then there's like these tree trunks themed seating panels that have like 6 seats next to each other, like in groups of 12, and you face each other on these two towers, and then the free fall is kind of like it tilts you forward a little bit, and it gets kind of it's really hard, it's really weird, it's not great.
Well, at one point you get to the top, and it starts out innocently enough, like a giant frog hopper, and then it gets towards the end, it takes you all the way to the top, and the whole thing just like lurches forward and like throws you into the lap bar,
and then you drop,
and it's one of those rides where at least one person per dispatch like absolutely loses their shit because they feel like the ride is collapsing out from under them.
It's kind of what it feels like. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I guess that's kind of it was kind of nonsensical to me.
It's the kind of ride where like if you really feel like being a shitty person, get some friends together and make them ride it and see if you can lure them over there when the ride isn't actually doing its cycle. So, get them on and get them in line before they can see what the ride actually does. I can say this from experience because that's exactly how my first experience went, where I rode it and they were like, oh yeah, that's just a little, but you should ride it with us. And I was like, okay, like whatever. And I didn't see what it did prior to riding. And then so when we rode, it was like, I thought my life was over. But it's super fun regardless.
So now let's talk a little bit about the big boys.
Duo.
So we have Hoofdsuperkamp and Voldampf. Now Voldampf is a train station themed Vekoma Junior coaster that starts off, Junior Boomerang, that starts off with its usual like backwards lift and then drops to the station, has a couple of like these like bunny S-turn hops, and then eventually goes into the station of Hoofdsuperkamp, which is themed to a like a hostel.
Yeah.
And then you go through the roof of it and stick out of it. And then you do, of course, the hops backwards. Now, above this, which is a really fun Vekoma family boomerang coaster, like it's really pleasant. It has like the larger, newer trains. Like it was actually kind of comfortable. Like it wasn't bad. And then above that hovers a giant new Vekoma suspended thrill coaster, an STC as they call them, which is the new version of an SLC. It's almost like not even comparable because this is the first ever kind of invert that does the things it does. It's almost like a twister looper.
It's like airtime and
really,
zero G rolls.
Yeah, imagine like a Blitz coaster without a launch, but then like on an invert. Really, really unique. There's really like fun small inversions before there are large inversions. Like Just really weird stuff. So I guess we're going to run through the layout real quick because it really
It's
is
got
like a different kind
the
of coaster.
station. Yeah, so at the station, you're in like a big restaurant bar.
That's part of the
thing.
hostel.
Yeah,
like you can
it's
check
part of
in
a
there, get the
hostel.
keys and stuff. So the front row queue has its own queue with its own hallway, and it goes by like the front desk area. And then the rest all are all a shared space because obviously the front row is more unique, and it's themed to you being a kind of like a backpacker trekking through the landscape and like stopping at a hostel. So every seat is themed to like you wearing a backpack and having a little flag on you.
It is really cute.
It's really cute. And so obviously it's an invert, right? So you start off with your lift. Then you have this pretty steep drop that no pre-drop or anything. It's like a steep drop down, and then you go straight into this giant zero-G roll
that
goes over the
soars
station,
over the glass roof of the Voldampf
exactly
train station,
and then it goes right around the supports of Voldampf's backwards lift via a Immelmann. So you have this like Immelmann kind of elements that hugs or actually repurposes the same supports as the Junior Boomerang. And then after that, you have this like pretty big airtime hill that goes over the midway.
Yeah.
That's followed by another airtime hill that kind of changes direction, kind of like an S-turn. So this thing is like half the elements. It gives like non-inverting airtime moments, which is really, really wild for an inverted coaster. Then you're followed up by, I believe it's a zero-G roll.
I love the way the zero-G roll looks in this render from space. Like
it is a zero-G roll, yeah.
My favorite part of this ride is exiting this mid-ride zero-G roll into a 270-degree downward helix.
Super low to the ground.
So
nice.
Intense.
Oh, it's so intense. That's a funny thing. Like the pacing on this thing goes between like these giant elements and like these really tight elements mid-ride. Yeah. That's followed by like a little airtime hill, and then there's this overbank turn.
Overbank.
And then there is another bunny hop into a pretty sharp drop.
Well into the ground.
Into the lowest part of the ground, which is below midway level practically. And then there's a really sharp little zero-G roll corkscrewy kind of moment.
Where you hop up and over the 270-degree helix and then back under it.
And then you pop up into the final break. So, and then at the final breaks, really, really nicely themed. You're like in kind of like this alleyway between the
station and the maintenance area.
Yeah, so and then there's this big rabbit, and it's it has some sort of German story about like really you're afraid of a big rabbit, and you keep going, whatever, something like that.
The ride is brilliant.
Really, I mean, it's amazing. It makes you feel like, oh my god, so between that and Fly and whatever I've heard of Leg Coaster, I need those damn Vekomas in the United States. Like, I need more of them closer.
The sucker punch intensity of a B&M invert, but it is incredibly satisfying, very family friendly.
I think what I enjoy about it is that the trains are so long, and yet it doesn't feel like any part of the train necessarily gets the worst end of it.
The pacing is wonderful.
Because they have really snappy elements, but the ride is shaped in such a way that like the rolls kind of continue. I mean, everyone's seen the new Vekoma designs. The rolls kind of continue in such a way that like a really long train, it's still like an enjoyable experience to everyone. I feel like when you think about B&Ms, for example, the trains could be kind of short, but like there isn't a whole lot of continuous rolling going on. A lot of elements then go back into the direction that they came from. But kind of like Fly and Hall Superkampf, which have long trains and are mostly inverted, there is a lot of elements that are snappy, but whatever the element is followed by kind of lets that snappiness be the same for all rows. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's really genius design work, I think, where and of course the front and back give different experiences. I think we constituted that we like the front the best still, because I mean most inverts I think that's the case. But the back too is just so whippy in some elements. And if you've seen our vlog, which it's on our new YouTube channel, I was really amazed by the airtime on it. I think the first thing I said when we got off, it's like, wow, there's like an invert with airtime.
Proper airtime.
Yeah, the restraints are lap based with like a slide vest. Is there even a vest on these?
There's no vest
on these. It's just a lap bar. That's right. This is already past that generation. It's just a lap bar, and there's just moments where like you get good out of your seat air with just a lap bar. It feels like like a good airtime coaster, but it's an invert that also has inversions. It's just very, very pleasant attraction.
You sit in this thing thinking like, all right, you sit on it, your brain is thinking like Jimmy Neutron Atomic Flyer or something. Like just a simple little, it's a whole ass thrilling ride with some great moments. That's my only complaint is I wish like the inversions were a little more varied. The Immelmann is a great moment. even though it's not a true inversion, it's sort of like a partially inverted Immelman. And the barrel rolls are great. I just almost wish there was more. I wish there was like a dive loop or a vertical loop or just more. I wanted it to be even longer. It's a great ride, and you just want more.
Well, despite having 2 0G rolls, they're both so different.
Yeah.
One is like this giant. I mean, think about it. The first thing you do is you drop straight down to almost ground level, and then there is a almost like Sky Rush height difference in the second element, where it's very stretched out, but you go through it so fast.
A corkscrew at the beginning.
And then that second 0G roll is
like a
much more snappy version.
0G.
Yeah, almost like an HB roll situation.
Yeah. Like it kind of reminds me of like what you could do in Roller Coaster Tycoon. You do like the half corkscrew piece and then a half 0G roll piece, and you think like, oh, this is very like interesting. Like a park's never really done this, but now this park has. But yeah, for a ride that has 3 barrel roll type inversions, they all definitely feel different. It's more varied in their applications than like an RMC, for example, having 3 barrel rolls, unless we're talking like Untamed or something. But yeah, for me, it's there isn't much about the ride I would change, except that like it could always be longer.
But it's still a pretty good length, though, for an invert. I feel like a lot of inverts aren't that long unless they're really, really big.
Really perfect for the park.
And the layout feels so unique. I feel like a lot of inverts, especially when you're used to like Batman clones or the SLCs in general, it all just kind of feels the same because there's so many similar coasters out there. Or even the big B&M inverts. But this really felt super unique, almost in the way the Fly felt very unique. It just felt like its own product line, even though it's an invert or a flying coaster. So kind of cool how close these Vekomas are now in Germany and Poland and stuff, and they're all so fire. Again, I really want them in the US. Oh, another really funny thing about this ride is, you may have seen our TikTok about it.
Oh, the storks.
It's the storks. So we're like in this stork protection nature area that like a bunch of storks live in. And storks are not afraid of any fucking thing. Like they're just like storking.
They just roll with it.
They roll with it, and they're pretty competitive. We saw a couple fighting where we were like cresting the lift hill or like right below us or whatever.
They were like dancing. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and we're like, wait a fucking second. And then, but anyway, there's one sitting on a support. The support is white.
Yeah.
But it wasn't painted white. It's painted green.
Yeah.
But this bird has lived there, like, so they are almost like penguins. Like, they are paired for life, and then they live in the same place for practically their entire life. So one stork decided, okay, girl, this support over here, this is my stork tower. Like I have my little territory.
So that support belongs to that particular stork.
And the stork lives on the stork.
Live on that.
And shits on the stork every day.
On the support.
On the stork.
This stork is going to live on this ride's support for like the rest of its life. Like he has chosen the support.
And he sits there, and the train comes by like every minute or two.
And he don't give a shit.
And he just sits. He does give a shit on the support.
He literally shits on the support. But he
doesn't mind.
He doesn't bother. He's completely unbothered.
It's so great. Like
there's a lot of storks living in the trees around like the drop ride and stuff. Like this is a very stork heavy corner of the park. The whole park is famous for their storks. Like in one of the older areas of the park, they have the little stork water garden show with the music and like the 2 stork statues. Yeah. Representing their little mating dance.
The whole area has like all these like road signs that are heart shaped with storks on them and stuff. Like, it's super endearing.
Like and there's like stork statues and things. Like it's definitely like the local mascot. Like they love the storks. They embrace them. And like not only were they like doing their little dance at the top of the lift hill, but you can hear them clapping their beaks.
Yeah, it's like a loud clapping. Yeah.
It's a distinct sound that you'll hear throughout your day. You always know that there's storks around.
But overall, that combination of the 2 coasters is phenomenal. I wonder more often. I know there's some parks looking into doing a similar thing. It's just really, really, really good. I feel like that's by far my favorite attraction there.
It was
the invert.
It just
like,
felt
it was
classic.
That freaking good.
Like a classic Tripsdrill move to have like this integrated double e-ticket thrill combo ride set up, just like the Cinque de Sal and the Log Flume, or doing Caraco and the River Rapids ride, kind of in the same basic area. Great. This park has such a fabulous lineup of coasters. Like, you really couldn't ask for more.
And also the giant zoo safari park that's right near it. That is also worth visiting, according to Sven. Check that out. But yeah, park overall, really pleasant, very cohesive because it's so green and landscape focused, and everything has space to breathe. Like everything's kind of its own area. And
something else that is really great about this park is like parks in Germany have decided that every theme park is going to be full of individual themed areas. Like parks like Phantasialand and Europa Park and Efteling even have like really influenced so many parks in the area, and everyone is doing themed areas and little vignetted sections, even if their park was never designed that way and the areas of the park don't necessarily lend themselves to those themes. But parks are just doing it because that is the thing to do. But Tripsdrill is so confident and unbothered by what other parks are doing. They're just doing their own thing, and the park is all the better for it.
It's very refreshing. It's very unique.
The park has one cohesive mood. Like, you could divide it up into thirds, but it's more of a geographical division.
Yeah, because the park is really spread out. So you have that giant loop. You have the original square with all the little dark rides in the gardens. It's really heavily vegetated.
And then you have the Halshuber
and then you have the new
Peninsula.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and it's all just like everything has its own individual little theme, but all of the little themes of the rides are all just local color.
But one thing I actually want to say in that vein is that you can always kind of tell what the park's motives are based on their color schemes on coasters. And this park, like, everything is really kind of works together.
Yeah.
Because you have green, gray, and brown, beige kind of as like their main colors, whether it's the wooden coaster or the invert. And then like there's one pop with dark red for Volump, and that still really works because it's kind of like underneath this giant cover of gray steel. Brown steel. So overall, all the colors are really just like, you can look at this park from a distance and it doesn't look clashing at all. It's not like you're in the Magic or Cedar Point or something.
Really wants to embrace nature, the natural beauty, color palettes.
Though I will say, in general, European parks are really not Walibi Holland, but
they're usually
most European parks have really started repainting stuff in naturalistic colors. I mean, think about Walibi Belgium and their repaint of Vampire with black and red instead of blue and red. And then Cobra there is now a beige. And then, of course, you have Movie Park Germany that changed their look-de-look into beige. There's just a lot more naturalistic colors being kind of a vibe. I really, really kind of like landscapes like that. Hansa Park is no different. Same thing. Heide Park. Just German parks in general, they have a pretty good color thing going on. Like, then they kind of keep it consistent.
German parks are so unconcerned with whether or not their skyscraping roller coasters are noticeable from far distances. Like, they don't need neon colors and things to Well,
also, oftentimes they're located nowhere near anything that's visible.
Right.
And also, it's a lot of protected areas where, they're expected to paint stuff a certain way to protect, the nature around it, Heide Park particularly. Really, really good park. We can't wait to go back. I think we will go back pretty soon because it's not too far from Frankfurt, not too far from Stuttgart. It's doable. In fact, we're even toying with the idea of doing it on the same day as Holiday Park, but honestly, I can't be bothered by going to Holiday Park.
Yeah, once we went to Tripsdrill, we were like, oh, maybe we could leave early and go to Holiday Park, and then we were like, no, this park is too cute. It's too perfect. Tripsdrill would be the ultimate pass holder park. It would be such a vibe to just show up every day. Well, not maybe not every day, but a couple times a week with your little wine goblet. And
Sip wine and ride
Pacomas and
that's right. That's the vibe. And we're going to end it with that because it's already 3 a.m. here. We are always recording at the weirdest times. So make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, all the good stuff. Check out our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Please help us grow because that's our newest thing. And of course, all this amazingness can be found on thecoasterkings.com. Look for our Tripsdrill park updates, park trip report. There's lots of awesome pictures in there. I really enjoy the photography of this park.
Of roller coasters.
I think you can put kind of more of our thoughts together by looking at the pictures there. And without further ado, we'll catch you guys in the next episode, which for you and I together will be Road Park, I think. Yeah. So we'll catch you guys in the Road Park episode, and you have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.